Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Red Cat holdings. It is time for another update, and today we discuss the seemingly endless extension that seems to be forming within this structure. Like, really, what is happening here? We'll be discussing more about that in a moment, but before, I would like to go quickly through the larger time frame for any of you who might be new. And we also have an interesting opportunity in a couple of scenarios on this chart actually. But yeah, before we get to those, I would like to provide the full context for everyone. And here we have been tracking this idea of a larger leading diagonal within this white interpretation, where a wave 1 would be complete, a wave 2 would be complete, and we would be within the third wave to the upside. As part of it, we would expect this third wave to form an ABC structure, then get a wave 4 correction and a fifth wave to complete the entire pattern. Now, of course, this is, as always, not the only interpretation. There is even a more bearish scenario where this could instead form an ABC structure, especially since the yellow interpretation has taken charge of this chart. Now, nonetheless, this yellow scenario could just as well work within a wave A in this area, but we need to be prepared for this to form a potentially even more significant top than the wave A. But nonetheless, once we actually have a full count in this structure, we would need to be prepared for quite a substantial correction to occur. Now, are extensions possible? And as always, yes, extensions are always possible, and I could even track this entire uptrend as a series of 1-2 setups within this area, and even here 1-2, and the third wave could have just started. Now, I wouldn't consider this as the highest probability interpretation. I won't be focusing on this scenario. It is quite unrealistic, and rarely do they actually work out. Now, internally within this structure, we have had actually a glorious trade setup, because we had within this fifth wave, where remember we are tracking just an ending diagonal, but within this fifth wave we had an initial 5-wave move to the upside. This has been highly promising because once we actually topped within this wave A, we had this exact area of support between the $10.2 all the way down to the $6 level, and the probabilities suggest that after an initial 5-wave move to the upside, we expect a 3-wave correction, and then at the very least another 5-wave move to the upside. This was working perfectly within our interpretation for the fifth wave, for this wave C to unfold within this area, and surely enough, we formed a 3-wave correction perfectly into the last level of support at the 78.6% retracement, getting only a wick below this last level. Yeah, we have pushed briefly below the $6 level, and then we reversed to the upside into the $18 level currently, where yeah, we already had a 3x from around the last level of support. Yeah, now moving on into the internal structure. We have been tracking this wave C primarily as an ending diagonal itself. Within this structure, we did have an initial 1-2 setup. We did track this as such. We were looking even for the next 1-2 setup within this area once we actually topped here. But we had this quite substantial retracement. We nearly broke below the beginning of this secondary wave 1 to the upside, which is why we have been much more inclined to believe this is unfolding as an ending diagonal rather than an impulse. This was also not an issue per our interpretations, because we didn't need an impulse to form within the wave C. Remember, we are tracking a wave C. A wave C can form as an ending diagonal, meaning that we don't need to track this idea of a really unusual 1-2 setup where yeah, we get such a deep retracement below the supposed area of support you would normally track for such an interpretation. So yeah, we have been tracking this idea of a large wave 1 up, a wave 2 down, and then an ABC structure to unfold within this wave 3. We have been tracking it all along. We had an area of support for the wave B correction. We had an initial 5-wave move to the upside within the wave A. Sure, it wasn't a high probability trade setup internally, but we were still within the larger area of support. Remember, this larger area that started at the $10.2 level down to the $6 level was a highly regarded area. This was making even this smaller trade setup much more interesting, where we were looking for a wave C to unfold as part of the wave 3 to the upside. And we had an ideal target. I believe it was around the $12.4 level, something like that. We have far exceeded that point within this wave 3, and we seem to be well on our way into the ideal target for the larger wave C, which, by the way, I also provided this to you. That is the 100% extension of the wave A around the $21 level. Now, of course, it doesn't need to stop there. If we had topped within this wave 3 already, it is rather likely than not, but yeah, we also don't need to get there, so I wouldn't look too much into it. It's just an estimation. I would focus more on the internal structure to get a better understanding of when we may have a more significant top in place. And moving on into the actual internal structure in this area, we have been tracking this wave 3 to still form a possible extension higher. We did have the possibility to see this count have an even additional push to the upside. We actually formed a couple in this area, but unfortunately right now I struggle to find a reliable pattern that would allow this fifth wave to still extend. I would probably need to consider this to have been the wave 4 bottom, and I have here something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th and a 5th. In this structure, I wouldn't expect any additional highs. Sure, we could extend even higher, but if we are to track this as a 1-2 setup or something like that, something similar, I would need to be tracking a third wave to follow. If we build a third wave following this structure, I would actually need to consider that this is rather the third wave just beginning, and this would be just another 1-2 setup instead of the third wave itself. Now remember, we have been tracking this wave C as an impulse anyway, meaning that we might still manage to form an impulse within this entire large wave C. That has always been possible, it's just not necessarily the highest probability interpretation for me, or has not been, because now we are actually seeing some shifts within this structure. So in the previous video, we have already been considering a possible top within the wave 3. Now I would need to adjust the area of support, since we did extend a little bit higher, yeah, actually quite a bit. But now if we were to continue this as a correction in wave 4, I would be watching the levels between the $14.3 all the way down to the $10 level. Now, within this structure, within the idea of an impulse, I could consider instead that we may have here something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th and a 5th. In such an interpretation, I would have a slightly different area of support for a wave 4 correction. So we'll be tracking this within the blue scenario, and we would also have quite a lot of room still to build this pattern. Now, if we see another extension, I will probably start looking for the yellow interpretation once again. But as of now, if we manage to extend in a more direct fashion higher, I will probably consider this blue interpretation, as for the wave 4, in yellow, I would normally expect at least a slightly larger correction. Yeah, normally even for this as a 1-2 setup, I would prefer a larger wave 4, but yeah, for now, the market seems decided. It seems quite determined actually to push to new highs based on the internal structure. We will be discussing more about that in a moment. But yeah, right now, I want to discuss this correction a little bit. So in this area, we only formed a 3-wave move to the downside. This suggests that we wouldn't need any additional lows to look for the reversal into new highs to the upside. Not only that, we have been forming steady higher highs and higher lows within this area that I could actually see forming an initial 5-wave move to the upside. So it is a bit difficult to track a count within this structure, but yes, something like a 1, 2, 3, 4th and a 5th could still occur within this area. If it is to form an impulse, I really would expect it to push on a little while longer, but yeah, I wouldn't put too much pressure on it, and in the end, ultimately, I would still be watching the area of support, assuming a more significant top within a wave 1 would already be in place. And I would be tracking here, still within the blue interpretation, the area of support for continuation higher between the $15.5 all the way down to the $14.4 level at the 78.6% retracement. Again, this would be part of a 5th wave within a larger impulse in this case. I wouldn't necessarily concern myself with how this follow-up, the structure actually managing to play this interpretation, would affect the rest of the chart. I will be tracking this pattern. If it works out, we'll figure out that structure, that case then. But yeah, it certainly is a possibility that we can track. And I was mentioning in the beginning of the video a potential trade setup, actually a couple. So this would be one of them, the idea of a 1-2 setup within this area. Now, this is assuming we have actually topped within a wave 1. We can track a correction in a 3-wave pattern in a wave 2 in this area, and it could already start to be interesting. Yeah, at these levels we could already be looking for a reversal to take us still to higher prices. Then, if this is to fail, I would not be bearish. I would be looking once again for our larger area of support for the wave 4. We have been waiting for this all along. We have been expecting this correction. This is, in my opinion, another opportunity for trade setup. Now, of course, it's not to the same degree as we had for the area of support for this wave B. We would need to scale down, certainly, our position size, but it would still be able to create an interesting opportunity. In my opinion, as long as we stay currently above the $10 level, we can still track continuation higher, and I will be looking for continuation higher as long as we don't form a clearly bearish pattern that would suggest a failure before breaking the 61.8% retracement at the $10 level. Yeah, remember, as long as we stay currently above the $10 level, even if we form a sharp decline, yeah, let's say we form a single candle in a daily into the 61.8% retracement, I would still be looking for continuation higher, and I would still need the evidence that this structure is ultimately going to fail. Now, would that be a good sign? Clearly not. Like, we wouldn't want such a large correction. Like, what is it from the current prices? Like 40% nearly? Yeah, we wouldn't want that. Of course, it would already be a strong signal, but it would not be evidence. Yeah, it would not be a signal that this structure has yet failed. But for now, I can provide you a more generic area of resistance, and other than that, really, I wouldn't think too much of the actual count. I would be watching the levels of support for continuation higher, and yeah, a break above the $17 level would be a signal to me that this structure has formed already a more likely bottom. But don't think too much of it. This could form even an expanded flat correction, or yeah, who knows, maybe even a running flat correction. In the end, I will be looking for the areas of support for potential positions. Yeah, now I'm not telling you when to buy. It is up to you. I'm telling you my personal ideas regarding these structures and this chart. And for now, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover. And I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.